Welcome back. You're watching HFO-TV.
I'm Greg Frick, partner at HFO Investment Real Estate, here again at HFO-TV. Today we have Jennifer Shuch, our Senior Research Analyst. Hi Jennifer, thanks for coming back.
Thanks.
Well, not that you've left anywhere, I mean we work together, but I thought we could have a little conversation about kind of just some of the nuances of research in the multifamily world. And one of them that's kind of come up again and again is inclusionary zoning that got passed in the state of Oregon, and in Portland specific. I think it was January of 2017 they had to have permits in. Anything previous to that was not under inclusionary zoning. Anything after that was under inclusionary zoning. In the city, and we've seen a lot of different things about the success or lack of success of the program, and it all is kind of hinges on the amount of housing and permits. We've had these discussions for the last couple years about how we get the research, what it means. Maybe we can give our listeners a little in-depth analysis or look at of, what does it mean and kind of the nuances of it and some of the difficulty maybe in getting true accurate numbers on, what is in the pipeline, what's going to be built, and where's it going to be delivered.
Yeah, so the city talks a lot about, vested units or units in the pipeline.
Right.
They'd say, 19,000 units were in the pipeline pre-IZ. So anything submitted before, like you said, that February 1st deadline in 2017. And they consider anything in the pipeline is if it is in land use, if it's applied for building permits. So there's kind of a range of what you have there. And all that they require is that they've paid a permitting fee, which is kind of the lowest.
Kind of the fee to actually get in to get a permit, but it's not pulling permits, it's not pulling your SDCs.
No.
It's almost just a fee to say, hey, we may be thinking of doing this.
Yeah, and the city has said that they don't track if something falls out of the pipeline, which is understandable. It would be difficult. You'd have to call all the developers.
Right.
But
we try to do it, and it's not easy. And we talk to all the
Exactly.
developers, and it's still not easy sometimes.
So that number that they've kind of carried through it's not really clear whether all those units will be built.
Okay.
And that kind of creates a problem where you're looking at this number that's a pretty large number and saying, okay, well, we still have 19,000 units that are going to be built in the next few years, but we don't really have 19,000 units. And in the 18-month review of inclusionary zoning, the number was starting to get a little lower, and the city said they weren't sure how many of those were built and how many of those fell out of the pipeline. And the reason is they're not really tracking what got built that was not subject to inclusionary zoning.
So when they looked at 2017 and, during 2017, I know they're annualizing some numbers now, looking back from 19, looking back at those numbers. Are they even putting a line saying, hey, the stuff that got pre-permitted or whatever it may be, this is pre-inclusionary, this is not? They're just looking at the 17 as a whole? No, it's
just all. And they are keeping really good track of how many inclusionary housing units are
being
in the
delivered.
pipeline. Yeah.
Right.
So none have, or I'm pretty sure that none have been completed thus far. There may have been a couple that got completed within the last few months.
Yeah, I know there's been a couple that have been out, yes.
I think it's like maybe 10 or 11 units, something like that. But they're tracking the inclusionary housing units that are being built in those specific projects, but they're not really following what isn't subject to inclusionary zoning.
Gotcha.
And we had asked at one point several months ago about, well, are you paying attention to how many 20-unit buildings or under 20-unit buildings are getting built in areas where there could be more units? And
to let people know that, with inclusionary zoning, if you go over 20 units, you're subject to. If you go under, so it's 19 and below, you're not. And our fear was when we told the cities, with this policy, you're going to have sites that could maybe hold 25, 30 units. They're going to push it back to under 19 or under, not be part of inclusionary zoning.
Right.
In essence, less units being delivered to the market, which will again exasperate this whole housing shortage.
Yeah, so there may be sites where it could accommodate 25, 30 units where only 18 are getting built.
Okay.
And
so they're not tracking what kind of opportunity
or they
lost.
weren't. I mean, maybe they are now and we just don't know. But the last time we spoke with somebody at the city, they kind of said they're not tracking that because it's, again, kind of
Right.
complex to track. And the good news is the city of Portland has a lot of tools that make it easy for us to track stuff internally, but we really kind of rely on them for knowing more about the permitting process than we do, since they're the ones that facilitate
Well,
it.
and they know where it is in terms of, is it a pre-app? Is it app? Have they pulled have they pulled their permits? I mean, we get some of that in talking to our clients.
Yeah.
But,
And, I go through every Monday and I look at the permit information that they post, and I track that in our system. And, there's great resources like Portland Maps has the permitting information. Next Portland, which isn't associated with the city, that's an outside company, they do a really great job of tracking and mapping development information, but the city kind of has the most resources for that.
But it's just a matter of trying to focus on what kind of thing we've been asking on with inclusionary and other kind of examples of policies. Are you really putting mechanisms in place to track the effects and or the benefits and negative effects of various policies? And it just seems sometimes it's not easy to do, but there are systems that could get done, and it would be, I would think, better to make policy based on real numbers as opposed to just hypothetical, we think this is what's happening, or
Yeah, and like there was just a study done by the Upjohn Institute that was talking about how market rate housing, the trickle down effect.
Right.
And it's not a one-to-one effect. It's like for every one, new upscale housing unit, it creates 0.6 units kind of further down the line, right? So they kind of said, in evaluating inclusionary zoning, what you want to do is say, for every one affordable unit produced by inclusionary zoning, if 1.67 market rate units is kind of canned because of that it's actually having a negative effect on lower income communities.
Right.
So it would be really helpful to have that kind of metric where we're looking at, are we maximizing the number of units that could be built on these lots, or are we building under 20 units? Are we building as many market rate units as we were pre-IZ or close to it, which it doesn't really look like we are? What is the impact of that across the whole market?
Right, in which we're starting to see the effects now. 17, it was a little early, 18 we started, but now in 19 we're seeing that the permits are down post-IZ, and like you said, is the delivery of this number of inclusionary affordable units, was there a negative offset because you didn't build, instead of building 25, 30 units on the site, they built 19, and that's one part, and you've got other ones where, like you said, the trickle-down effect. And then again, a lot of the research that Jennifer does, which is very good, can be found on our site under the research tab, and feel free to reach out to her if you've got specific questions. Thank you for coming again. It's always a pleasure. And we'll see you next time on HFO-TV. Thank you.
Our entire office specializes in multifamily real estate, making HFO the largest multifamily brokerage in the Pacific Northwest. Your success is our passion. Build your legacy with HFO. Call 503-241-5541 or visit our website at hfore.com for more information.